Japanese are very good.
Yeah,
So,
Japanese
good
maybe is a little
afternoon,
faster.
ladies and gentlemen. Almost good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Faisal Abbas. I'm the editor-in-chief of Arab News, Saudi Arabia's main English language newspaper, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this very important session. I think we've established from the opening remarks, and if you've been following the development of generative AI in the past few years, that it's going to impact every aspect of life. What we're about to find out in this panel, whether it's fortunately or unfortunately impacting our jobs as journalists, and more importantly, how all of us, including you, including us, consume news. There's a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages. Fake news cannot be any easier to produce or spread. At the same time, verifying news, you can apply the same concept for. I'm delighted to be joined on this panel by a number of dear colleagues, esteemed colleagues, subject matter experts. To my direct left is Anthony Naqash, who is the regional director for Google in the Middle East and North Africa. To his left is also my dear friend, Dr. Caroline Faraj, the vice president for CNN International in the region, the founder and editor of CNN Arabic, and also my very dear friend, all the way from the United States, Ben Smith, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Semaphore. He's also a former media editor and wrote a fascinating book called Traffic. It's about how us in the news business were chasing numbers for the past decade, and we're going to see now how things are going to change. Caroline, let me start directly with you. You have, as I've mentioned in the introduction, you do have a lot of advantages. In a way, you cover both worlds. You are in CNN, but you're editor of CNN Arabic. We are in this part of the world where a lot of news happens. At the same time, you have access to best practices that are being deployed in CNN. So I know it might be simplistic to ask, but let me put it this way. AI, a force for good or a force for bad in your newsroom?
Well, thank you for the question. This is something that we're still trying to find an answer for it, because we've been trying it for the last couple of years, and we will continue trying it. We're already trying it internally. We haven't done anything for that goes live, because if we do anything like this, we have to, of course, we have to be very transparent and inform our audience. So far, the translation, the transcribing, or sometimes even collecting data and so on, it's being tried internally, and it looks fine. But we still have about 5%, like 95% accurate, 95% good to go, but we still have the 5%. 5% for us is vital, because this is how we basically measure the trust between us and the audience. If we just ignore the 5%, we will definitely that would mean that we're ignoring our relationship with our audience. So far, we're still testing, and we're also testing the possibility of building our own tools. So this is, I hope that maybe next year or the year after, I'll be able to give you clarity on where are we now.
But I'm going to ask you to hold on to that thought about building tools versus acquiring things that have been developed by Google. But I want to ask you a quick follow-up question on that. Today, because news, as we all know, news does not wait for anybody. If people have a bad intention or an evil intention and they want to manipulate, they're not going to wait for all of us to be ready. So somebody runs into your office, says, I've seen this video where a president of a country is declaring war, or a submarine has entered somebody else's territory. And as we all know, technology has made it almost impossible now to tell the difference. What do you do?
Well, we have our own standards, but don't forget, AI is also good to use for verification. But you need to give it also to put some guardrails. And these guardrails are always controlled and handled by professional journalists. So you still need the journalists. You can use the AI for verification and collecting data, but you have to depend on the people on the ground to keep checking. So you can be late. I know that CNN is always be the first to know the truth, but the truth can wait if I'm not 100% sure.
All right, thank you. Building on that, Anthony, Caroline has very kindly gave us an excellent segue to my follow-up question. You are the regional director for, if not the biggest, one of the biggest tech companies in the world. Um, to quote Stan Lee, with great powers comes great responsibilities. And why should Caroline and her team at CNN take on the burden of building tools to fix a problem that, not saying Google, but technology companies facilitated? Shouldn't this be the role of technology companies? And what tools are available or in the pipeline from Google, because we all know you are committed for good, available for news organizations such as CNN?
Well, thanks for the question. And I love the fact that you talk about responsibility, because when it comes to AI, and Google has been an AI company for a long time now, we talk about three words: bold, and we can come back to what that means. Together, same thing, we can come back to what that means, and responsibility. For us, we've always been looking at like how we can build AI in a very safe and responsible way. We've had responsible, ethical way of looking at AI for quite some time. So, like we are giving, our job is to give tools to news organizations and users so that they can actually figure out what's real information and what's misinformation. So if you think about like, you said like it's getting more and more difficult now
Yes.
to figure out exactly what.
Yes.
So the best way to actually combat that is to use AI to do that and use watermarking. So we have a technology now called Synth ID that actually allows us to watermark text, video, images in a way that absolutely doesn't interfere with the content, and allows us to figure out if that content has been generated by an AI. But we also have tools that have been around for a very long time. They can do like reverse image search, and lots of journalists are actually using this to figure out if this image was already existing on the web somewhere else and everything, figure out if it's been misused in this context. So we really think that we have a role to play, and part of what we're doing is to give news organizations and users tools to actually figure out what had been generated by AI and what's not been generated. But it's a collective effort. I mean, the thing is that we're taking our responsibility, but we have to work with regulators, we have to work with academia, we have to work with news organizations, and we'll take our responsibility.
Absolutely. I have two quick follow-up questions on that. First, obviously it's very ethical and very responsible from you to be doing these practices. But the problem is rarely reputable big companies such as Google. It's usually the malicious player who are usually underground. And these people will not abide by the rules because they have malicious agendas. So, and you know, to your point, in the last Munich Security Conference, I think all the big tech companies agreed to watermark anything that is produced by AI. But then again, as I just said, the problem isn't the big tech companies. The problem is those malicious actors using the technology developed by these companies to do it. So, how do we help news organizations track and tackle those things? And the other question is, it seems to me that it's always an afterthought. So, and I'm not just talking about Google, but if you look at it in principle, Facebook, Apple, Google, none of them were really founded by veteran journalists. Usually they are engineers or coders who have an imagination, but they have probably no understanding at that time, especially at a young age, how this will impact the media world. So isn't it time that these concerns are weaved into the coding from the beginning?
Okay, so there's a lot in your question. So first of all, I think I would disagree with you when you say it's an afterthought. Like
It's a
afterthought.
afterthought.
I think we've had since 2018 our AI principles that are guiding and governing everything we do: product development, research, business decision. And it's about making sure that AI is beneficial to actually society, that it's removing unfair biases, that it's accountable to us, people. So we have that since the beginning, and so it's not an afterthought. To your question about like journalism and how this is impacting, I think it's a fair question. And so like our founders, our leadership are not people who are coming from this industry, but we are working very closely with the industry, and have been for a very long time. I think our relationship with news organization is probably 20, 25 years old. I spent personally, before that job, I spent 10 years working with publishers. So that's something that's very, very close to me. So we work in full partnerships, trying to actually develop our product so that it fits the purposes of the news organization. Getting feedback on board doesn't mean that we do everything that the news organization asking us to do, because we have also to balance what's good for the user, which has always been a guiding principle for us. But we actually have that active dialogue that allows us to tweak our product. Good example is AI Overview, which is the next generation of our search experience, where we have, and we can talk more about it, but we're having good results, and we are engaging with news and publishers to make sure that this actually helps them acquire useful audience.
Thank you for those thoughts.
Can I just add one thing
Sure.
here? I think it's also important not to depend on the media organizations and also the technology organizations, but we should also depend and equip the schools and the curriculum. We should start with schools, educating people, building awareness in different places so that they can understand what does fake news mean, how to basically find out what's the fake news and how to handle it. Because if we only depend on ourselves, we're only dealing with the niche. We need to go to the grassroots, and we should start with them as of now, especially in a country like Saudi Arabia, 70% of the population under the age of 25. So you're dealing with very young population, and these are all, they know how to handle things, but they're not fully, not everybody in the region or in the world is very educated, because we haven't studied this at school.
I will come back to that thought. I think
Sure.
it's an incredible topic, and we need to discuss it. Maybe we should also talk about educating journalists on the dangers of fake news.
Absolutely.
Now, Ben, as I've said, you've written the book
That's
on,
quite a
on
way
traffic.
to introduce me. Thank you.
You've written the book about traffic. You've just launched Semaphore, which has an amazing code of conduct. You've tried to fix a lot of the problems that has happened in the last decade and a half. Now, it's very easy for us journalists to bash the technology companies and blame them for everything that is going wrong. But according to what you've written in your own book, in your observations as a media editor, journalists in some media organizations weren't actually that innocent. In the pursuit of traffic, you've mentioned incidents, real incidents, from websites which we will not name, who had parents beg them to remove intimate videos of their daughters, and the website wouldn't remove it until they've got their traffic target. Now that is completely unethical, but it was done in the name of traffic. Now, add to that what AI is going to do. So in that incident, that was a real intimate video. Now you can create a completely fake intimate video of somebody who actually didn't do anything and blackmail them or put it online to get traffic. So I'm going to ask you what I asked Anthony in reverse. Shouldn't we be looking at reimagining the code of conduct of journalists, the mission of journalists, and the deliverables of journalists?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for having me. And I should mention, for while people are fiddling with their phones while we talk, that we're also launching here in the Gulf, and you can sign up at semaphore.com. It's interesting. Right now, I think the question of, I think there are huge opportunities for media here. I mean, in some sense, the biggest threats are to the business model, from a media perspective, or to the business model of a generation of media that got addicted to traffic and got addicted to often technical tricks aimed at bringing in readers to what was often not really original information, but remixed information. At some level, the core function of journalism is to take things that are not on the internet, that you do not know, that AI does not have in its corpus, and put them on there. And that's something, and that, to me, that fundamental core isn't really threatened by AI. And if you have some shocking secret about your employer, please talk to our team over there. We would like to know it. But I think the question of the responsibility of journalists in an era when particular fake images, fake audio recordings went from being something that you would, like in my career, I think, covering American politics, where people lie all the time, people do terrible things for 20 years. I think once somebody gave me a fake document. Roger Stone, the former Trump advisor, once faked a document and tried to get me to write about it. That's once in 20 years. Now, now sort of images of questionable provenance, audio recordings are everywhere, and I think it's a huge opportunity for media to reimagine its role to some degree. I think it's a great opportunity for CNN, actually in particular, but certainly for all of us, to be a sort of good housekeeping stamp of approval on information. Because to say, you've seen this, but we've reported out the sort of chain of custody of this audio recording. We talked to the person who recorded it and was in the room. We can tell you that it's real. I think that's kind of the next step. Right now, the big challenge isn't so much people being fooled by fake images as the reverse, what people call the liar's dividend, that people doubt real images. And that I think about actually, we talked about sort of horrible features of American media. I think about this famous recording of Donald Trump saying really disgusting things that emerged in the run-up to the 2016 election. And it was an audio recording from a television show where he had left his mic on, but it was just the audio, and someone leaked it. If something like that leaked today, any politician would say, oh, that's a deep fake. And we wouldn't really know. And I think right now the big threat is not so much that we're going to see a video of you doing something ridiculous and believe it. It's that we will see that video and we won't believe it, And that's, I think, the real challenge right now.
So do you agree then with Caroline that perhaps we should be thinking bigger than just media outlets, tech companies, and presumably people, if you watch this new generation, they're on their iPads from 2 or 3 years old. So we teach children how to eat using a fork and knife from a very young age and how to use a spoon. But I'm with Caroline. Nobody sits with a child growing up and tells them, this is how you consume news, this is how, is this something in the realm that you and the media...
Oh man, I am so much more worried about Gen X and older people. I think,
really?
I think that young people, for better and for worse, really have learned to be skeptical and to try to and to immediately be skeptical of anything they're presented, of images, of videos, of claims, and to try to figure out where they're getting it. I think they're much more likely to trust individual journalists, individual influencers, than some system or some brand. But I think that the people who always are most disoriented by these waves of change are, I regret to inform you, us, right? Our kids are going to be explaining it to us.
But I'm not sure if that makes me more worried or less worried, because
makes me more worried.
This generation is the generation that gets voted in to make decisions, and if they are making decisions based on false information, you could be voting for the wrong candidate or backing the wrong campaign, and nobody will be held responsible.
Yeah, the American presidential campaign yesterday was consumed by a fake story about people eating cats. No child would believe this. Only we believe this stuff.
So I'm going to open the floor in a moment for questions. If you do have a question, there's a very nice drone over there. There's a microphone, primitive technology.
That's a good drone, right?
Yeah, it's a good drone. Okay. There's a primitive technology microphone somewhere here in the room. You just need to raise your hand and the microphone will come to you if you want to ask a question. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back to Anthony and Google and technology companies and build on the conversation we just happened. Now, your presence in the region has been phenomenal. It has been felt. You have projects across the region. I know for sure, I'm aware, because like Ben, I'm a former media editor, so I'm aware of all the partnerships and workshops that you've held for media outlets around the world. I want to ask you about your program to support news organizations and news gathering. And you mentioned that this is something that you've done directly before this job. Apart then taking what many critics would say would be a fraction of the money Google makes out of the traffic coming from news websites and reinvesting it in news organizations, what do you think the biggest achievement was of this partnership program?
So, one of the big achievements is we've trained 20,000 journalists in the entire region.
In this region?
In this region.
Okay.
From Morocco to the UAE. I think your team has benefited from this training, and I think that's a huge achievement, because that's 20,000 journalists in the region. who are now better equipped to use digital tools, and not just Google tools, by the way, but digital tools, like allowing them to actually enhance the experience for their user, better using the tools as well for themselves and for their work. So I think that's probably the biggest achievement. We've also driven innovation, funding some innovation in the region. OCAS in Saudi has benefited from it to actually like try to figure out how to improve monetization using micropayments, for instance. So we've been funding innovation as well, and that's another thing that we are still working on actively.
And your new AI tools, so Astra, for example, where do you see it fitting in the equation of supporting news gathering, publishing, and verification?
So Astra, for those of you who don't know, is actually still an experiment, right? So where you are able to interact with the real world directly and asking questions about what you see, what you hear, real time. And so we are looking at how we're going to be able to bring Astra to everyone as soon as possible. It has yet to be figured out exactly how it's going to be brought. But let me give you an example of something that is actually real and that AI has enabled, which is a massive achievement. We have a product called Pinpoint. Pinpoint is an AI-enabled tool that allows journalists to actually gather lots of information and make sense through this information. This was used by the Boston Globe in 2020 to actually gather a lot of insights about accidents across the US and records of drivers to actually figure out if there was enough being done by the authorities when it comes to holding accountable drivers across the country. They gathered tons and tons of information, and they could not have been able to actually go through this information and get insights from it without a tool like Pinpoint, without AI. What that allowed them to do is to actually make a story out of it, which won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism in 2021. And that's directly AI helping journalists. So what's coming next is for all of us as like tech companies and media organizations to figure out what the use cases can be.
I want to have a follow-up question to Caroline, but I want to give a chance to the audience. If I can have the microphone or the drone go to this gentleman here.
And there's 3 here.
Microphone.
Faisal? There's also 3.
And there's a lady over there, but I can't see the microphone.
Test.
Yes. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Tariq Ali Ahmed, media editor at Arab News. Thank you very much, first of all, for the great panel. And I'm not just saying that because Faisal's my boss, but I wanted to pick up Ben's comment on the fact that Gen X is the one to be more worried about. I've had many a argument on the family dinner table with my uncles and aunts because of me telling them that no, you should be more skeptical over certain things as opposed to just believing things immediately when you see them. But they take this in a very, they don't like being told what to do by someone younger, which is why I would imagine my question to Caroline is, CNN has a big role to play because they're more trusted by this generation than the younger. How would CNN and other traditional news outlets be able to bridge that gap to make it less aggressive between younger and older in terms of teaching them about fake news and AI and whatnot?
Thank you, Tariq. We'll take the answer from Caroline, but if we can kindly move the microphone to the lady over here while Caroline answers this question.
Very simple answer. You listen to them. We listen to our audience and we hear exactly what they wanted to do and how we can enable them. We don't empower them. I don't like the term empowering because they're already powerful. But we enable them and equip them with the knowledge. Sometimes we offer training, sometimes we offer listening, but listening is a must before taking any action.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Najla. My question is about the threats of the information. We know we are living in a world that you cannot differentiate between the truth and lies. And what are the best ways to identify? And is there a technology that could work in a way that will help us identify the lies rather than being spread and us not really differentiating between them? Especially, as you said, there's audio now. They could manipulate it through using AIs. And is there ways to identify it, or signs, or something that we could look into?
Allow me just to clarify the question. Help us as end users, as yourself, or as media organizations?
Media organization. Is there ways, like for a media, not just like to see the ways to identify the lies?
And sorry, are you a journalist yourself?
No,
Okay.
I'm just a reader.
Okay. No, but this is a very important question. Let me just build on that question. Should these verification tools be in the hands of the end user or the media organization? Does the end user need to wait for the media organization before they identify something that is fake? Anthony.
I think it's both, right? And so today, if you go to Google search, you can already look at an image and search specifically about that image. As I said, like you can do reverse image search and look if that image was already there many years ago and is like now being misused. You can also like go and ask for about this image and it will give you information. So I think it's important to actually give some of the tools directly to the end user, which probably builds on your point about like media literacy and making sure that the users know how to use all these tools. But it's important as well that media organizations have these tools, because when they go and they have news to share, they need to be able to make that work before. So I think it's a mix of both.
Thank you. Ben, especially that it's an election year. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't
I
want
mean, I
videos of crowds, fake crowds emerging and fake
Yeah,
statements.
and I think there's a huge role for the tech companies here, but I also think it's more complicated than people realize. Like Meta had this project to identify things as AI and ran into this problem that if you use Adobe as a photo editor and you press the button that says, make Faisal look a little nicer, like the lighting
difficult.
isn't right and his hair isn't quite right, it cleans it up. That then marks that photograph as generated by AI, which maybe it sort of was. And I think as these editing tools become ubiquitous, a lot of us will be using AI tools to edit photographs, and these lines may blur a little. And so I actually think, while there is a big role for the tech companies, in watermarking in particular, totally AI generated images, I do think these questions about provenance are very important, and which is basically a journalistic question of, where did this, particularly with audio, which already you have no idea if it's real or not, the really knowing who recorded this, how did it get here, can I trust it, is basically a factual question, not a technical question.
I want a microphone here, please, for this gentleman, but I do want to follow up just to make it more useful. I know it's called product placement, but is there a tool that you use that you recommend for people to verify?
We look at the watermark, the sort of tools that places like Google provide, like Anthony mentioned. But no, there is not a cure-all technical tool out there where you can drop an image in and say, is this real? And I think, as soon as a technical tool exists, people will figure out how to deceive it. I think I think it's kind of a pipe dream that you're going to get, that users will have some tool that tells them.
Well, there's plenty of investors here at the Global
but
AI Summit, so if you want a free idea, there you go.
But it's very important that if we ever use AI, we should be transparent and inform the people that the image that you're watching or the video or anything you're listening to is actually, we use AI for it. We cannot just claim that this is done by journalists. And this is another issue that, that's why sometimes we say that we can check it, sometimes using AI for verifying also whatever is being fake. But at the same time, I think we're seeing more and more people now going to the brands and the platform that they trust, because there's a trust, and that's why it is more. It's an extra burden actually on the organization, that they have to be always careful to keep the trust between them and their audience.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, you're saying the tool is journalism, which I basically agree with. I just think people don't realize how blurry these lines already are. If you listen to podcasts, for instance, say if I'm recording a podcast and I say that, I don't know, that Saudi Arabia was founded in this year, and I get it wrong, these days, instead of going back into the studio and having to re-record it, my producer can just fix it with AI, and that happens all the time. Podcasters use that constantly, and is that like a terrible deceptive practice? It's a gray area.
I mean, yes, and I have recently joined Instagram, and they recently applied this label of forcing people to identify what is made by AI, I was surprised that there's actually not that many pretty people in the world. I mean, 80% of the accounts are using AI. But I'll take a question from here, please.
Hello, my name is Ezra from the American Chamber of Commerce. My question is to any of the panelists. I would like to know what is the role of the regulators in all of this, and what do partnerships with entities like the Ministry of Media look like today?
It's a very good question. Do we have another question? Because we might have to wrap up soon. So if you kindly pass on. So noted on your question on regulators, the gentleman behind you, yes?
Abbas.
Yes, I'm Mustafa Al-Dorsani. I'm a student of computer engineering. I just want to ask about the AI. It's getting bigger, growing fast, and that's make a little bit worry about students, how they can study, they affect the studying, and a lot of jobs is closed for AI replace it, and a lot of jobs opened. So how can us as student can find us in the market and get the job?
Right. So,
Faisal, the gentleman's
and
been
we have one more
raising-
question. I think by the time the microphone goes there, we'll take these two questions very quickly. So, regulators, Anthony, one of the criticisms of big tech companies is that they are seen or believed to be stronger than governments, that they can challenge. And on the flip side, some people say governments or the laws are not really up to speed or up to date with where technology is headed. Where do you think is the right balance with the relationship with regulations?
So when it comes to AI, we've said it loud and clear. AI is too important not to be regulated, and AI is too important to not be regulated well. So it's all about like having the right regulation, and the right regulation is a regulation that strikes the balance between the innovation and the protection of users and society in general. But this is extremely important, and we are working across the world, including in the region, with governments to actually make sure that we are building together the right regulation. And we're working with different ministries. That we have an amazing partnership with the Minister and the Ministry of Media, making sure that we're actually building this, and also like training content creators about the latest digital thing.
Absolutely. Now, Caroline and Ben, since you're both in the industry, AI and journalism jobs, net profit or net loss?
I don't think that the AI is going to take our jobs, because it will minimize the layers. Sometimes you have lots of layers that you don't really need them. But are you going to really use AI to go to the war zone and to the front line to cover stories, and then you will believe them? Of course not. You cannot really replace the reporters who are on the ground, the eyewitnessing, all of these things who are on the ground, because that's the core of our what you are looking for as an audience, and that's basically our main mission, one of our main missions. So that's why I believe it's not going to take jobs, but be smart in choosing things. Don't just follow what your neighbor is studying. Study something that has a future, and that is something we have plenty of opportunities in the media.
Ben?
Yeah, it's eliminating the worst jobs in journalism, which are like the assistant who transcribes your interview and the and copy editing and things like that. And the most interesting fun jobs, which are basically manual labor. You're going out and talking to people. Those are harder to replace. So yeah, manual labor is basically.
We'll take a question. Well, last question.
Thank you, Faisal. It's Sean Trainer here from Salient KSA. A lot of the conversations have been around information gathering, validation, distribution. Let's flip to the other side at the user end, right? So you talked about listening and obviously driving traffic. Do you think there's a role in AI in really understanding how news is consumed, sentiment analysis, etc., and how could that improve?
I think there is. The sort of dream of AI in terms of from the consumer perspective is personalization, and our industry has had these endless conversations, really, since the birth of the internet, about like a personal newspaper just for you that has really not worked at all. And I think, the dream. I think the best case of AI is a sort of AI assistant who goes out and gathers everything that you're personally interested in, brings it back to you. And it's an opportunity right now because social feeds for news have been collapsing. Like the experience of a platform like X, just much worse than it used to be for various kind of social, political reasons. I think the balance of that and the challenge is that it's sort of interesting for you to get your personalized feed, but also it's important for you to know what I'm seeing and to see, and part of the reason you look at the front page of the FT or of the New York Times is because it's a human curated impersonal experience that tells you what other people think is important. And I think that's a sort of tricky balance for AI.
We can't hear you.
Sorry, we turned off your mic.
So you only get
No.
one question, sorry. Ben, let me ask you a quick follow-up on that. So when you say personalized, you just mentioned in the beginning of the talk that your Semaphore is launching a Gulf edition.
Yes.
Is that an actual physical edition with people working on stories from the region, or is just curated through AI, for example, for the region?
Yes, no, it's, I mean, I think actually what's sort of the fascinating thing right now in media is as we all talk about AI, the thing people actually most want is a connection with a journalist, a connection with a person on the internet. Nobody wants AI feeding them news. And so, no, we have great journalists over there, Mohammed Surji, Sarah Dadouche, who are launching an edition that will be personalized to you, Faisal.
Great. So I think we have 5 minutes, so we have one time for, well, all the hands are up. So I'm going to have to give people who haven't asked a question, I'm so sorry. The gentleman here, and the gentleman here. We'll see how it goes.
Yes.
We'll go a quick round. Yes.
Thank you, Faisal. My name is Khaldoon Azhari. I'm from Arab News Japan. I have a question about technicality. If you write story and then you use your byline, like I wrote story and I said by Khaldoon Azhari by my name, and then I check it on AI and it makes fantastic improvements. So should I say it's by me and AI or just keep it by my name?
Noted. If you can pass on the microphone, so who the credit goes to? Yes, gentlemen.
Hi.
We're gonna do speed dating questions.
Yeah, my
Yes.
name is Roshan Kakkad. I am one of the regional TV news channel CEO. We recently had an AI summit conducted in Bangalore, south part of the India. So this is not a question; it's just a feedback to the panel. So most of the leading media houses, including us in India, what we have taken as a policy in terms of AI generated content is that no content will be published without human interaction. That means all the content will be either monitored or governed or reviewed by a human interaction, which means basically journalists. So that from a viewer perspective and the reader's perspective, no content will be kind of coming through the reader without a proper monitoring from a journalist perspective. So this
I'm gonna do Richard.
This could be taken forward for a policy making.
I think it's a comment, right? The gentleman here.
The gentleman behind you, please. So,
Come on.
no content to be used without human interaction. Yes.
Here, here.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ronak from Benzinga. We are a business publication from the US. I just have a small question on your responsibility as a big tech company, since you are coordinating with governments, regulators, and the media. Towards your users, how do you ensure that they are aware of the fake news, and how can they basically since you curate news content as well, so in that sense, how do you strike a balance between those
So like a fake
things?
news watch. Can you pass the microphone to the gentleman in front of you, please? And that will be the last question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam rahmatullah
My name is
barakatuh.
Jasmali. My question is there anything 100% real? What's real and what's fake? Ben here mentioned something that everybody now use apps to edit and improve or enhance pictures. Now, can we say that it's a real photo or it's enhanced? Can we, or should we start using another things like this is 70% real and 30% edited or enhanced?
Great questions. I'm going to try to pile them up and we can round it up with our final thoughts.
These two are almost similar. Yeah.
Yes. So, first of all, Ben, I'm going to give you this question. If somebody co-authors a story using AI, is it, as Khaldoon said, does the byline just go to Khaldoon? Is it Khaldoon with the assistance of Alexa or with the assistance of Siri or with the assistance of Astra? Or is it fully AI?
I mean, I think it's sort of the same answer to all these questions, which is that it's about your personal responsibility for it. Like, you don't say this was written by Khaldoon with like a word processor and spell check. And I think it's a tool, but ultimately the responsibility is with you, and the lawsuit, if you defame somebody, is you. And so I think that's actually true of a lot of these sort of hazier philosophical questions too. In some sense, it comes back to who's taking sort of ethical and legal responsibility.
Caroline, I want to ask you about chasing fake news. Now, to use another example, the BBC, they have a whole show where they just follow fake news and report on fake news. Now, one could argue you are giving fake news a platform. What's CNN's view on this topic?
No, if there's a fake news or fact checking, as you know, that we do lots of fact checking. From our perspective, it is telling the truth, and it's our responsibility to tell our audience what's the truth, and therefore we should do that. But on the other hand, we should also train them how they can do that.
Anthony, final word with you on the point about what's real and what's fake. I'm going to go a step further. Now there's a human intervention. We are prompting AI to produce things. There is still a lot of questions up in the air. So who owns the copyright if AI writes a story or a film or a script? This is the reverse of Khaldoon's question. Khaldoon's saying, I've written a story assisted by AI, but we're getting to a point where AI can write a film in Shakespearean English and claim credit. So, and this is a regulatory question as well.
So I think so. We talked about regulation. There is still a lot to figure out when it comes to regulation, and something that we all have to work on together. We talked to regulation in the context of misinformation, but copyright is also extremely important to figure out. And same approach, we are working with governments, making sure that when we are establishing the right regulation, that we'll have the right balance between innovation and protection of copyrights, because it's absolutely essential that we are treated. And we've done that in Google for a very long time, and we'll keep advocating for that balance between innovation and holding copyrights.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for those who couldn't ask questions. We try to accommodate as many as possible, but that's always a sign of an interesting panel. I think in 45 minutes we managed to cover quite a lot with this remarkable panel. Education, we have some controversial headlines here. It's not the new generation that should be education, but possibly, who knows, maybe the older generation who are making the decision. Regulation is needed, and not only needed, but it needed well, because AI is too important to allow to remain uneducated. And while there is definitely a loss of jobs, there's also a lot of opportunities being created by AI. And at this point, I would like to thank you for being a great audience, the Global AI Summit GAIN, for hosting us, and for our fantastic panelists for what was one remarkable session. Thank you very much.